What's up, y'all? Today we are chatting risk mitigation as a real estate developer, as a construction manager, and as a development firm, construction firm. So, not only for projects, but also as a company. I'm Adam Stark, host of Veterans Who Build Show. Thank you to our channel sponsors, Jet.Build. If you're looking for ways to better manage your real estate development and construction projects, look no further. Jet is the command center software for end-to-end real estate development and construction management. That's www.jet.build. All right, let's jump right in. So what does risk mitigation look like for a business, right? Thinking back to, my time in the space working for family office in New York City, building high-rise mixed use development, hotel, residential, commercial, you name it. Lean internal teams, building significant projects. So I'm sure, as you can imagine, someone on the team, one of the stakeholders involved in the project, whether that be on the design team, whether that be on one of the trades, the GC's team, doesn't matter. One person is out of office, I don't know, sick, just had a kid, moved to another state and just left, right? What happens to that information that was connected to that individual, right? It disappears or it follows them. What do I mean by that? It disappears in the sense that it's probably getting logged on their individual device, right? So on their computer, on their email chains, on their Excel files that no one else will be able to understand. Now, how does that impact the project, right? How does that person's colleagues, that person's manager, project owner, how do they recover that information, recover that time loss, recover that management loss? I mean, the reality is they don't. They scrape, right? They do their best to just plug up whatever is urgent. Granted, as we know, everything on a construction project is urgent. The urgent of the urgent is what they're going to cover until they can get up to speed themselves, find a replacement, whatever it may be, right? So siloed data is what we just talked about, right? Second thing, also tying to data, is if it's siloed in those environments, like we just mentioned, right? Excel files, email chains, notes on their computer, whatever. It's not being indexed. It's not being retained. It's not being used. It's not being leveraged. And it can't be, right? Unless you got an individual taking that all out and logging it in a central system, which we all know nobody's doing that, right? Nobody has that individual. So this data, not only does it go get lost, right? Not only does it disappear if someone's out of office, if someone leaves, but it's also not even being used to the extent it can be. It's not being leveraged as an asset. The data is not being leveraged as an asset, right? Now, the third thing is going to refer to communications and accountability, and that will tie into protecting your project and protecting your business. So what do I mean by that? If communications are, again, siloed to this individual's devices, granted, if it's obviously if it's on an email chain, then whoever's on that email chain is receiving it as well. Yes, I understand that. However, if they leave and that person's colleague wasn't on the email chain, which high likelihood they're not, that email's gone, right? You're not recovering that. So that's on the communication side of things, right? Just a simple example of an email chain, right? That'll be gone from the perspective of the company where that person left, whether you're the GC, whether you're the trade, whether you're the architect, whether you're the developer, it doesn't matter. It's the same problem, different circumstance. The information, the communication, and now the accountability element of that. I mean, it goes away, or that lift then transfers onto and spreads across the different parties, again, on this example of an email chain, right? So what happens in that scenario? Now that's going to be, you know, a dropped ball, right? I mean, that's really tough to be able to cover on things like email chains and attachments and in-person meetings with, no tracking of those meeting minutes, of those action items. No tracking in the sense that it's in a central system, that's in a system that the data is being logged and can be accessed by others, right? I'm saying tracking in the sense that it's going to be on an email chain, it's going to be on a PDF, it's going to be on an Excel or a Word document, right? That's not helpful if someone leaves. It's better than nothing, but it's also going to be a massive time suck. It's going to be a massive waste of time to recoup that information, to cover for that person, to understand, get up to speed per se of what they were accountable for, what they were communicating, to who they were communicating, what were their deadlines, what was their status in those deadlines, right? So we hit those two elements on this third point, right? That was central communications and accountability. And that third element of this point that I brought up was protection as a business. What do I mean by that? If this person leaves, right, they were responsible for, I don't know, an HVAC riser, that the equipment, the specs, they got delayed, then something got installed, that installation wasn't fit in with whatever was specified in regard to size, location, power, capability, so on and so forth. Well, how are you figuring out who was right, who was wrong, why something happened? The way that you're going to potentially do that, if you are successful in doing that, is you're going to be diving into these email chains, right? You're going to be looking through Excel files and PDFs and emails. And if you have access to those emails, which hopefully you do, right? Why put yourself in this situation, generally speaking, right? We had siloed data, right? Leaves with the person, gets lost with the person, data not being retained and leveraged as point two. And then that point three was centralized communication, accountability. And to wrap really all those 3 points together, it's that protection as a business, right? How do you mitigate the risk of any employee at any moment getting sick out of office, going on vacation out of office, had a kid out of office, got a better job out of office, partner got a job in another state, they're dipping out of office, moving closer to the parents, gone out of office. How are you mitigating for this risk, right? This inevitable risk, this risk factor that we've seen rise year over year in terms of employees moving to different jobs at an increased frequency, right, than it used to be. So less loyalty per se for extended periods. So it's a risk factor, people leaving, that is more significant than it used to be, right? And that's only one of the potential scenarios of this risk factor, right? People leaving for another job, but you also got, sick, had a kid, had to move, whatever it may be, right? So this touches on both project perspective in terms of how this can impact project schedule, which obviously then impacts project budget, which then obviously impacts stakeholders as a whole, right? It's a huge mess. So that's project specific. Now, business specific or more macro to the business perspective, what's it doing there is really the same thing, but on the business level, where that's going to be your time, your money, your loss in business, right? Your loss in whatever you accounted for on that original schedule that's now getting dinged because of this out of office scenario, right? So you can look at this and say, well, in all these projects, you had one person out of office for a week. Well, if you think about the potential for, your company having that one person, then the architect having one person, then the engineer one person, then the trade one person, then the developer one person, et cetera, et cetera. Well, why accept all of that time loss? Why accept all of that extra stress on the balance of the teams covering for that one person compounded across these stakeholders, right? Why do that to yourself? Fix the problem up front, right? How do you do that? Get a cloud-based product, get a cloud-based system, throw everything on the cloud, right? Make sure that everybody, relative to permissions that are sensible for each stakeholder, make sure that the parties are communicating on a platform, that they understand accountability across teams, right? Rather than continuing to rely on these siloed environments, which naturally are going to be the case in any development and construction project because you have different stakeholders, different companies that are involved in a project, right? So you have to bridge the gap of risk, right? You can't control these external parties. You could only hope that they're going to do their best. Well, why don't you help them do their best? Why don't you enable a central product so that data will be retained, data will be leveraged, communications will be centralized, accountability will be centralized, risk will be therefore reduced, right? So what happens if my colleague, I don't know, has a kid and is on maternity, paternity leave for a month, 2 months? How am I going to cover for them if all of their project responsibility is in their inbox, right? In their Excel file, in their PDF, whatever. I mean, I'm going to waste at least a week to try and catch up, get up to speed on their information, which that's a best case scenario if I get access to their email, right? So why not forego that situation? And again, recognize that that concept can also compound across all of the stakeholders, right? It's not singular to you as the developer or to you as the general contractor, right? It can compound to every one of the stakeholders, and then what? If it's just one per stakeholder or one per every other stakeholder, even centralize it, right? So if this colleague of mine is out on, parental leave because they just had a kid, well, now I just step in. Immediately I can understand what ball is in their court, right? What were they managing, right? So I'm going to leave it at that, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel, like, drop a comment, let me know your thoughts, let me know what you'd like me to cover next. And also, please stay tuned for the upcoming release of the show itself, right? The Veterans Who Build show. That's going to cover veterans in the built environment. So that's everything from real estate, commercial real estate, AEC, tech, material suppliers, everyone and everything built environment. It's going to be a really awesome show. Really excited about it. Have a lot of really cool guests came through. Really great content. And the purpose of that content, of that show, of this show, is one, to just inform industry like this conversation of what's going on, how to do things better, what are best practices, what are frictions we're seeing. But then the real goal of the Veterans Who Build show is to provide veterans the ability to share their story, share their wins, share how they transitioned from military to civilian life, how they transitioned into business, into the built environment, what are lessons learned, what is advice, right? So hopefully other veterans that are, thinking about it, entering the built environment, that are still in active duty, but are about to discharge, right? Here's the opportunity for them to hear other veterans, to have a clear pathway toward finding success, right? In whatever way that means for them. Everyone's got their own story. Everyone's got their own needs and methods of getting through, hardship, transitions, etc. Well, with the variety of veterans that will be on the show, I really hope that everyone out there, all the veterans out there, will be able to piece together and use and leverage things that they're hearing across these stories that are coming up, right? Do things better, learn from people who did it before them, and hopefully not get stuck in a rut. Hopefully, be inspired by others who already went through hardship, already went through uncertainty, right? Let's learn from those who have done it, and let's try and, to the best of our ability, not repeat those same mistakes. All right, everyone. The Veterans Who Build show is going live real soon, probably early March. It's going to be a podcast and video. Stay tuned. Thank you for joining. Cheers.